Hey guys, it's Mr. Wigand. Today we're going to look at adding and subtracting positive and negative fractions. When you add and subtract positive and negative fractions, you must follow two rules. Number one, you must follow the integer rules for adding and subtracting. Second, you must find a common denominator and follow the steps that you would for adding and subtracting fractions. So once you follow those integer rules, it's just like adding and subtracting fractions like you're used to. Alright, let's try one. Negative 3/8 plus negative 1/5. Alright, integer rules. When I'm adding like signs, I know that I add the fractions together and the answer gets the same sign. So I'm going to add 3/8 to 1/5, and since they're both negative, I know the answer will be negative. So I'm going to forget basically about that negative sign for a second, and I'm going to write 3/8 plus 1/5. Alright, when we add fractions, we have to find a common denominator. So, least common denominator for 8 and 5 is 40. Five times 8 is 40. 1 times 8 is 8. So 1/5 is equivalent to 8/40. 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. So 3/8 is equivalent to 15/40. Now I have a common denominator. I add the numerators. 15 and 8. 23, and then 40 is my denominator. And then I remember integer rules tell me keep the sign, so it's actually going to be negative 23/40. Alright, next problem. Very similar. Negative 3/8 plus 1/5. This time, only one of the fractions is negative. So I know when we add and one number is positive, one number is negative, when the signs are not alike, then we actually subtract the two numbers. And then we go back later and give the answer the sign of the larger number. So I'm going to forget about that negative sign for a second. I'm going to subtract these two. And I always do the larger number, 3/8, minus the smaller number, 1/5. Alright, once again, I got to get common denominators. 40 is going to be our least common denominator. 5 times 8 is 40. 1 times 8 is 8. 8/40 is equivalent to 1/5. 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. 15/40 is equivalent to 3/8. Now I got common denominator 40. I can subtract. 15 minus 8 is 7. And 40 is my denominator. I look back, what's bigger, 1/5 or 3/8? 3/8 is bigger, it was negative, so my answer is going to be negative 7/40. Alright, let's try another one. Alright, now we're going to add two mixed fractions. So we have a mixed fraction, a whole number and a fraction part, and a whole number and a fraction part. That's the only difference. Everything else we're going to do the same. We're adding. One number is negative, one number is positive, so we do not have like terms. So this is where I'm actually going to subtract. I'm going to forget about the negative sign. I'm going to do the bigger number, 6 and 1/5, minus the smaller number, 3 and 3/8. Common denominator, once again, trying to keep this simple for us all. 40. 8 times 5 is 40. 3 times 5 is 15. 15/40 is equivalent to 3/8. Don't forget the 3, the whole number part. 5 times 8 is 40. 1 times 8 is 8. 8/40 is equivalent to 1/5. Don't forget the whole number. Alright, now, 8/40 minus 15/40. Can't do that. Can't do 8 minus 15. So this is where I have to remember how to borrow. So if I borrow 1 from that 6, I now have a 5. That 1 that I'm borrowing, I'm going to bring over here and add it to the fraction. But since it's in a fraction form, I'm going to write 1 as a fraction. 40/40 equals 1. I'll add that 40/40 to the 8/40, and now I have 48/40. This 5 and 48/40 is equivalent to 6 and 8/40, just in a different form, so that it allows me to actually do this problem now. I'm just going to copy down this 3 and 15/40. Right now I can do 48 minus 15, 33/40. Don't forget the whole numbers. 5 minus 3 is 2. And then I go back, when I'm adding a positive and a negative, to figure out the sign, I look to see what the bigger number is. The bigger number is 6 and 1/5. It was positive, so my answer is positive. So positive 2 and 33/40. Well, not so bad, right? All right, now subtracting. Subtracting, remember, we do same, change, change. So for same, change, change, first fraction stays the same. Change subtraction to addition, and then I change the second fraction by writing the opposite. So this is 3/4, the opposite is negative 3/4. All right, now I'm adding. One number is positive, one number is negative. So I know when the signs are not alike, I actually am going to subtract. So forget about the negative sign, turn this into a subtraction problem. I'm going to do the bigger number minus the smaller number. We're always going to set it up that way. I have 4 and 8 as denominators. I need a common denominator, and it turns out 8 is our least common denominator. This is already over 8, so I can keep it 1/8. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. Now I can subtract. 6 minus 1 is 5 over 8. Go back to the original addition problem now. When I'm adding and they're not like signs, I go to the bigger number, and that tells me the sign of the answer. The bigger number is 3/4. That's negative, so the answer is negative. Negative 5/8. Okay? Just using my integer rules, following what I do when I subtract integers, and then also remembering common denominator and all the good things I do with fractions. All right, let's try another one. This one's very similar. Subtraction again, so remember, same, change, change. First fraction stays the same. Change subtraction to addition. Change negative 3/4 to positive 3/4. Oh, look. Now I'm adding, and both fractions are positive. Oh, that's no big deal. I can do that. 1/8 plus 3/4, because when the signs are alike, I just add them together, and the answer keeps the sign. 8 and 4, common denominator 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. This one was already over 8, so I can just keep that. 1/8 and 6/8 is 7/8. And then remember, signs were alike, so I keep the sign. The sign was positive, so positive 7/8 is my answer. All right, let's try one more. Right now we have mixed fractions. Keep doing same, change, change for subtraction. So keep the first fraction, negative 3 and 1/8. Change subtraction to addition. Change this number to its opposite, so it's positive 2 and 3/4. Right now, adding. I'm adding a positive and a negative. I do not have like signs, so I know that this is going to be a subtraction problem. Bigger number on top, minus 2 and 3/4. Common denominator, 8 and 4 is going to be 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 3 times 2 is 6. Don't forget the whole number. This is already over 8. Don't forget the whole number. Right. Here we go again. I can't do 1/8 minus 6/8. So I got to do that borrowing thing again. I take 1 away from that 3, and now I have a 2. So that 1 I took away, I'm going to add it onto the fraction part. I'm just moving it really. And I need it to be over 8. So I make it 8 over 8, because that's also equal to 1. Add 8 over 8 to 1 over 8, I get 9/8. And now 2 and 9/8 is actually equivalent to 3 and 1/8. But I'm going to be able to use this to now do this problem. 9/8 minus 6/8 is 3/8. 2 minus 2 is 0, so I just have 3/8. And it didn't really come up, but don't forget, whenever you're adding or subtracting fractions, always make sure your final answer is in lowest terms. I go back to the addition problem. When I do not have like signs, I look to the bigger number for the sign. That was negative, so my answer is going to be negative 3/8. Alright? So just remember, when we are adding positive and negative fractions, we're going to follow our integer addition rules. Like signs, add them together, keep the sign. If they're not like signs, we subtract them and keep the sign of the larger number. If it's a subtracting, then we're going to follow the subtracting integer rules, where we do same, change, change, and then follow the addition rules. And then we also have to keep in mind all the things that we do for fractions when we add and subtract, like finding like terms and being able to borrow and making sure our answer is in lowest terms. All good stuff. Alright guys, good luck adding and subtracting positive and negative fractions, and remember to keep practicing. Practicing and working on this is the key to making sure you really get good at it and know what you're doing. Good luck, guys.